This is DevCom Africa, where we unpack the power of communication in driving Africa's development agenda. And today, starting us off, this man is a legend. And when I say he is a legend, you'll understand why. This is a man who has really left a legacy in the humanitarian space on how we manage the humanitarian sector on the continent. He has redefined service, leadership, and impact. I tell people he's a walking masterclass. Dr. Abbas Gullet, karibu sana.
Asante sana. How are you?
Very well, Dr. Harry. Good to see you.
Same here.
Before you sit down,
Yes.
I want you by my side there.
Okay.
Because here at DevCom, we have a culture. If you remember the old ways, how we used to do the storytelling,
Yes.
it was always around something.
Yes.
What was that?
Well, I mean, in my context, it was around sitting around fires, could be around after a meal, could be sitting with elderly people, mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, the way you're told stories, and it's passed on from one generation to the other generation.
I like that you mentioned fire as the first thing, because we have our fire here. It will be an honor on this premiere episode for you to light the fire and light our conversation before we take our seats.
Asante sana.
Dr. Abbas, as culture is, you need to give us your DevCom beat. How do you do it in your culture? Wow. You are drumist somewhere, Dr. Abbas. You know, we all remember you. We saw you. And sadly, we saw disaster, but we saw hope in this country. And your leadership was quite unique. It was not about responding to emergencies. It was more about preparedness, accountability, efficiency, and engaging in locally owned initiatives. How did you achieve this different trajectory with the Kenya Red Cross?
Well, so we know the history of Kenya Red Cross. It's an institution that had serious problems in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. So when I came back into the country in 2001, the idea was to try to rebuild the society. And as someone called it, it was a phoenix that was rising from the ashes to it being rebuilt afresh, because it had been misgoverned, it had been mismanaged, and the public had lost trust in the organization and the confidence. So what was trying to do many things at the same time. One was trying to reorganize from within to make it a well-functioning organization with good governance, good management, good structures, with strategic direction and plan. On the other side was to try and work on the PR side and image and the face of the organization vis-a-vis the public and the stakeholders.
I remember it was called the leaking bucket. I was in high school and we used to do the first aid courses.
Yes.
And it used to be called the leaking bucket at that time. So I was really young.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes, it's true. It had that name, and the connotation came from the misgovernance, mismanagement, and the poor leadership that had been in place over a period of many years. So the idea was to also stop that leaking of the bucket, was to seal it properly, to bring back trust and confidence and integrity, but at the same time was to build credible programs and activities. People knew Red Cross for emergencies, but Red Cross was actually a developmental organization. And that's what people didn't know Red Cross about. They knew it through emergency, through disasters, whether it was drought, whether it was famine, whether it was conflict, whether it was, terrorism-related insecurity. This is what people knew. So the idea was to put systems and procedures to elect people with integrity so that to take this society to the next level.
And indeed, you took this society to the next level. You're synonymous with dignity and not charity. It's a term you used in between. We've grown up in an environment where we've seen everything as charity. But we said, no, it can't be charity. There need to be dignity. What pushed you to start dignifying humanitarian response on this continent?
I despise the idea of aid and handouts. People in this country and on this continent in the global south do not need handouts and do not need charity. Even however one may claim they are poor or they are not rich. Poor is a state of mind. If you subject yourself to it, then you would be. We've seen perpetually over the years that the global north giving aid to global south, and the global south is saying, hang on, no, we want development, we want investment. And the idea was to say, even humanitarian organizations like the Red Cross or civil societies and NGOs, the idea was, how do you get away from the mentality of handouts? Because it belittled people. You saw a mother, and these were pictures all over the world of an African lady, pregnant, having a child on her back, having 3-4 kids, walking behind her, and she's holding their hands, queuing up and lining up for food handouts and for aids of small few kilograms of food. And then even that food is not what is your diet, it's what is prescribed for you. It's rather, it's not, no one wanted to teach you how to look for that food, whether it's farming, whether, as the saying goes, you rather teach me how to fish than to give me this type of fish, which I don't like or I can't eat. If you're given maize, if you saw in Europe and some Asian countries, they were not given food handouts like we did. They were given money, for example, to go and then buy what they wanted to do. And that is why on the outset of Safaricom and M-Pesa in this country, we pushed for this idea to say, dignified way of doing assistance is to give people money and they can go and buy what they want to buy. You also promote the local markets and local economy. So for me, dignity was about giving people back their life, their right to choose what they wanted, as opposed to just handouts of what we or the donor wanted to give. At the same time, for national society like the Red Cross, is how did you work towards independence? And independence is not just in your mind, but both in your mind, in your stomach, and in your pocket. How do you get away from charity and handouts to becoming self-sustaining and self-supporting, something that were very close to my heart at the time.
And I'd like you to talk about donor priority, then recipient priority. And there was a joke that actually you were tagged as a disruptor or rebellious.
Sure.
Was that true? Were you a disruptor? Were you rebellious? Or you're fighting for dignified humanitarian response?
Well, they could use all these words. I was a disruptor because I didn't believe in the system that was there. I was rebellious deliberately because I felt that people wanted to continue with the status quo of handouts and handouts and handouts. And I said, no, I want to leave a legacy. Coming into Red Cross as a youth member, I joined the Red Cross by sheer accident in 1973 when I was in Form 1 and having to learn first aid. I was doing the President's Award scheme, and the rest is history. I never, from 1973, looked back. And I was a member and staff of the Red Cross for 50 years. But for me, the disruption and the rebellious attitude came as a result of what I saw with the International Red Cross that were driving the agenda of the global north down, imposing it on the global south. And we, the global south, becoming participators in that drive towards aid and charity and handouts, and never wanting us to be independent mentally in our pockets. And for me, this was wrong thing. So what I said to my employer then, IFRC, was to quit my job as Deputy Secretary General of the International Red Cross, the first African or global South person to have such a position. And people thought I was crazy when I said I was going to resign and go back to Kenya Red Cross, because I felt that I could use my knowledge, my education, my experience in trying to make a good of a broken society like Kenya Red Cross. So we created a new board, new governance, new leadership, new management that were young, well-meaning, patriotic to their country and to the ideals of what we wanted to achieve. We wanted to be the first African society that was self-sufficient, that was self-supporting, that thought out of the box and wanted to do things differently. And for that, we were judged as rebellious, as disruptors, and all the other acronyms that were used. But that did not deter us from doing what we wanted to do.
And you've been through terror attacks, through drought, floods, building collapsing, post-election violence. What moment would you say was your turning point and your resilience in why you felt things needed to be done right on this continent when it comes to humanitarian service?
I think it's something that probably I've had always in my system, in my genes, in my body, in my mind, in my heart. I think for me, the moment I decided to quit my job at IFRC, first of all, in 2000, I was in Fiji as the regional head of the IFRC Pacific region. And I decided to quit my job then because I was not happy with obvious discrimination that existed in the IFRC. I had been denied 2 jobs, one in Bangladesh and one in Indonesia. After being interviewed competitively and after winning that competition, the 2 societies in those countries, their leadership didn't want me because there was this mindset that a European will come with a bag of goodies as opposed to an African who would come with nothing.
Which was from Kenya.
Yes, and especially from Kenya. So back to back on 2 missions, I was denied positions of heads of delegation, even after being interviewed and even after being the candidate that was selected for the job. And for me, I said, look, then I can't do the 3rd time where I'll be discriminated for the 3rd time. So I'd rather resign and go back to my society in 2000. And that's when Kenya Red Cross was actually at its lowest ebb and having its own challenge of mismanagement and being equated to a leaking bucket, as you earlier said. So the leadership of IFRC was embarrassed that as a senior person, I was denied 2 opportunities because of perceived racism, which was the truth of the matter. So they offered me this opportunity to come back home on secondment, which was the first time ever it was done by the International Red Cross, for me to come to Kenya Red Cross and be the acting Secretary General for a period of 2 years. So that was my first instance. But the second instance was again in 2004, actually 2003, when the job of a Secretary General was advertised and I applied and I was told I was the candidate that won the interview. But again, in their wisdom, the powers be at IFRC decided at the board not to give me the job, but to give it to a European person from Finland. So that really hurt me, that I felt that this institution was not sincere, was not honest, and was discriminative. So I said, now time has come to go back home to Kenya and prove more to myself and to then my employers, Kenya Red Cross, that actually it is possible to turn around ailing institutions and make them viable and respected globally. I think the biggest turning point of Kenya Red Cross coming of age was in 2007. The post-election violence, which is something that had never happened in this country to that extent. Since 1992, Kenya has always had pre-election violence, but not post-election. So in 2007, we knew as a society in our planning that there will be pre-election violence, and there was pre-election violence. The post-election, we had put in strategies and mechanisms to foretell and to plan to say, if that happened, and we had all the indicators it would happen, what would we do as a society? And I think that is, as I earlier said, that's when Kenya Red Cross really came of age, because as per our planning and our preparedness, all that we had planned for, all the scenarios came. I think the society came of age. The society was the most proactive society. We went to places where no one else dared go. When the UN was packing and leaving the country, when INGOs were in droves leaving the country for fear of their own international expatriate staff, we were going to these places that were being left empty by all this international community. The government of Kenya respected Kenya Red Cross Society, gave it the space and even more responsibility to do what it had to do. The country, the government, international community saw that Kenya Red Cross would be the principal first responder to all emergencies, and that respect was given to us even by the movement, whether it was ICRC and IFRC. For the first time, they did not contest lead agency role within the mechanism of the movement. So the society was always in the lead. Yeah.
And we saw the commendable work that was done. And I'm happy, Dr. Abbas, you talked about preparedness. Do you think Africa is investing more in preparedness, in early systems, or we are still in that reactive gear? And just looking at the crises that have been on this continent, and you can tell when a government or people are playing catch up, they're running. What is the future of preparedness on this continent? Is it possible to be proactive and not reactive?
Well, it's very possible. It's putting your priorities right. It's putting your house in order. It's understanding as a nation, first of all, to understand and you map the types of disasters that have happened in the past, that are happening now, and what may happen in the future in terms of the changes that are taking place both in our country but also globally. It's about having policies. It's about having systems and procedures in place. It's about having institutions that are empowered by the government and given responsibility at a county level, at a national level. How many counties have policies? And even if they do have policies, do they implement these policies? Do they respect these policies? Do they have partners? Do they have agencies that have been identified? If it is fire, where the firefighting mechanism, are we in place? Is the fire department working? Do they have the necessary equipment, materials, training, education, and the capacity to respond? If it is first responders, we talk about disasters like ambulances. You know, every day there's a road accident. What are the major killers in this country? And they are known. But have they been mapped? Have they been identified? Have we then put measures and mechanisms? Disaster policy in this country has been a major issue. Kenya in the 80s developed a policy but never saw the light of the day. Many countries around the continent came and borrowed from Kenya. They domesticated and legislated and are actually implementing, but we haven't on our side. The question is, can we ever be prepared? Yes, we can be prepared. So the point, are we really prepared as a continent, even as a country to begin with? We are not. And if we were prepared, is what mechanism exists regionally as Africa? Where is African Union? How much has African Union done to inculcate this culture, to support African local mechanism, local structures, local organizations, local NGOs like the Red Cross and others? AU must depend itself for its resources, both natural, human, financial, material, and that's when then you're in the driving seat.
So what is the missing point? Is it poor leadership? Is it poor coordination? Is it human resource? Is it financial resources? Or is it just an African spirit?
I think the missing for me in this way, Noella, is on this subject is about leadership. It's about leadership and people who are in leadership setting up priorities. It's for lack of vision and foresight and people who are self-centered for their own interests. It's not for lack of resources, financial, material, human, on this continent, even in our countries, for example. It is possible. Okay? But it's about accountability, transparency, good governance, good management, and leadership that comes all together, that we have resources and putting priorities right. Look at what Ethiopia has just done now with the Renaissance Dam. Okay? Their energy requirement is gone. They will now export energy. They will now industrialize. Ethiopia didn't look for money to do that dam. They got it from their local population. People were raising every month certain amount of money being given. It's all done, aid-free. Okay? Now we as Kenyans will have to buy power from them.
From Ethiopia.
Okay?
Yeah.
What does that tell you? The resources are available. It's leadership and resources are available. It's not for lack of resources. The water will still start flowing, continue to Alexandria forever. You know,
it's been flowing and it will always flow.
Okay? The same here, what goes to the Indian Ocean. Yeah. Every year we have floods, you know, from Mount Kenya all the way to Tana River, Indian Ocean, we have floods. On the other side, Budalangi, Busia, we have floods every year. What are we doing to harness and to harvest that water, but still allow the flow so that people's homes are not distracted and they don't go into tents and into camps twice a year? I mean, it's not rocket science.
Of course, there's a bigger discussion about aid and disaster being a very lucrative business.
For sure.
You've been in this industry for quite a long while. What was your lowest point when, on one hand, maybe you have governments that are not acting fast, or you have poor coordination among, first responders? Then you have communities that are really suffering. What was your lowest in all the disasters you've seen?
I think the lowest point one would say is, what is the possibility and the reality? Okay? You will hear every day in our country and other countries, billions have been given for disaster response. But that Wanjiku out there, or that Amina, or whatever the name of that person would be, will not see the best of it. All the money disappears with logistics, transport, procurement, government officials. And that's why I kept on saying, let's use technology and use M-Pesa, transfer the money.
Cash transfers, a big innovation you did.
I used to tell the late Bob Collymore, my good friend, when he was CEO of Safaricom, give us network everywhere, so we have no excuses. It's about empowering local communities. I give you what you want, to teach you to catch a fish, not to give you the same fish every day. You decide what you want to do with the money. I was so taken back positively one day. We're in a place called Tangul Bay. Tangul Bay in Baringo County. And it's a market day. People have come from Laikipia with their cabbages and their potatoes and vegetables, everything out there. But these ones are not farmers, they are pastoralists, and these ones are farmers. But they know the market day. So they find their way there. And here we are giving people cash. And that was just a thriving economy where the owners of these commodities are out there selling and the buyers have money to buy. You empower local communities and local economies. The little shopkeepers with their sugar and salt and everything being sold there.
Kadogo economy. It's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
And that's what we say. Same in Kilifi. In remote areas, villages in Kilifi, you'd see the same. So, for me, I just want to say that aid has been imposed on us over the years. What for me has been the most challenging is having our leadership in our countries, in our governments, not understanding and saying no. India is a country in the world. During the tsunami in 2005, they said no more aid from anyone. They said no.
In the midst of a disaster.
Yes, they will do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's what we need to be arrogant about in these places. And you can be called rude, arrogant, bad,
disruptor,
all these things. But you stick to your ground.
But that requires trust, Dr. Abbas.
Yes.
And I'm happy you picked the case of Ethiopia because it's something our editors talk about. There's that ownership from the Ethiopians. You're talking about India. There's that ownership.
Yes.
How can such institutions or government create that level of trust with people? Because there's a disconnect, especially anything that is being led by the government. We don't trust. The African spirit, once again, we don't trust our government.
Noella, we saw, first of all, this should have been a big lesson for all of us Africans and global. When we had 2020, we had the global pandemic. For the first time, this whole concept or idea of localization came into fore. We've talked for 10, 15, 20 years about localization and empowering local institutions. And the West not trusting us in the global South and imposing people on us. But the pandemic showed us the opposite. God showed us it is possible that with lockdowns, all these international NGOs were not allowed. And for the first time, every country had the same disaster.
True. Globally.
Yes. So you had to do your local responses.
Yeah.
In UK, in the US, in Wapi, where even people more died than Africa, they had to respond locally. And since there was lockdowns everywhere, all these NGOs and UN agents did not have the field day they used to have before. So that was a big lesson.
Field visits.
Yes. If that was never learned, then this was the lesson.
Yes.
And this is where African governments should have taken over the ownership to say no more international aid. We will use local structures and local mechanisms and we'll empower them. We trust them. We will build them. That hasn't been done. So we saw aftermath of that what happened. And now, going back to this current situation, I mean, we can do things completely differently. We can take over. Government have to trust and build their own structure. You saw what happened during the Gen Z's uprising in this country. Money was raised.
Yes.
And for the first time, it was not given to local NGOs and CBOs because of the trust deficit.
Yeah.
It wasn't led by the government. And it was neither led by the CBOs and NGOs.
It was leaderless.
Leaderless. Even the fundraising in that way was leaderless. Hospital bills were paid completely. If you saw what happened in Nyeri only 2 weeks ago with that boy and his father. 6 million.
Kaluma.
Yes, 6 million was raised and it was given to the boy.
Yeah.
It was leaderless. What happened now in Embu only a few days ago, again shows you.
It's possible.
It is possible as long as the trust is there. We have to change. So humanitarian organizations, actors and players have also to adapt and change and get out of their comfort zones that they've had for many years. Because even that aid from out is not coming anymore. It's less and less by the day.
Every day.
Yes.
Dr. Abbas, there's this element, for instance, let me pick like my county in Trans Nzoia. You go to the remote, whether it's Mount Elgon, you'll find almost 5 different humanitarian actors doing the same thing. Is there a system within the non-state actors where you're able to coordinate? So A is doing this, B is doing this, and C is doing this. Is it competition for visibility? Or is it just ticking boxes? Because why have many in one place when other places also have
So again, like we've talked before, Naila, it's about leadership. Where is the county government? Where is the leadership in the county? Because if it is issues of disasters, issue of development, issue of health, water, this is the responsibility of the county government. And if a county government has a policy, then that policy should be articulated, put on the table, and NGOs and CBOs, they come and play on the priority of the county, not their priority. They can't go do what they want to do, where they want to do, how they want to do, when they want to do.
But it's happening, not only in Kenya, but the entire continent, Dr. Abbas.
Because we've allowed it. There is leaderless. We have no leadership. If the leadership was there and they knew, the NGOs, CBOs will fall in the line. If they don't fall in the line, go. We don't want it.
Okay. We'll take a short break. It's time to spin the wheel of insight. So let's go with our first spin, Dr. Abbas. Wacha tuone kama kuna nguvu. Why is listening to communities so important in development work?
Because it is them. It's all about them and their lives and their priorities and their choices, what they want. It's not what we want. We are there because of them. First of all, I used to say to my colleagues in the Red Cross, I may be the Secretary General, but I'm basically a public servant. Who are my employers? The membership of the Red Cross and the communities. Those people are affected by disasters or affected by conflict or affected by floods, whether natural or man-made. They are my bosses. They are my superiors. They're the ones who make me get my daily bread that I feed my family. So in terms of deciding priorities, in terms of deciding what is more important for them, and they also have a know-how. You know, many times we believe that we come with knowledge. Knowledge is with those people out there.
It's interesting, even when we do development communication, we tell people there's so much to learn from communities as opposed to just pumping them with information. Because within those communities, first they have the traditional knowledge.
Yes.
They have the historical knowledge.
Yes.
Then you have professionals within the communities.
For sure.
Super. Second spin, Dr. Abbas.
Okay.
What happens when development messages ignore local culture? You're going to Marsabit and the messaging is in English and not local language.
Then you're bound to fail. You're bound to fail because, again, you are not a good listener. You do not respect the local community. You do not appreciate them. It must be, you haven't understood your clientele. And you need to understand. You need to have your pulse on your fingers. You need to understand. You need to respect. You need to prepare. It means you haven't done your homework. If you haven't done your homework, then there's no point of going with your toolkit that is inappropriate to that community. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to make headways there.
Very true. And it's sad because at times there is life-saving messaging, but we always miss out. Who is the community you're communicating to? And these are some of the things you're talking about when you talk about development communication. Can we tailor? Each scenario is different. Each person is different. Who is it? How do they like it? When and what, and so forth. Okay, Dr. Abbas, final spin. What is one communication quality every public servant should have? As you take your seat.
One is to be humble, very humble. 2 is to be a good listener. And 3 is about understanding your clientele. By being humble, you don't go with the feeling that I know it all, and it is either my way or the highway. So listening, again, is crucial because you will understand the community or the population you are dealing with. And to be with integrity and honesty is for you then to be able to say as it is. When you don't know, you don't know. When you want their input and their advice and their support, you can tell them openly, and where you're not afraid to say the truth. But leadership is also about leading from the front. I mean, for me, in my work with the Red Cross, on many instances, I was ready to take the first bullet. For my young volunteers to have confidence, my staff to have confidence in me, I said I would drive the car first and you follow me. And we go with just our emblem.
Exactly.
And when your day comes, it comes. But we have a responsibility to this nation and to the community. And we went out and people respected us for that. Same thing with Westgate. You know, when I went that afternoon and packed my family in a car and they stayed for 5 hours waiting for me while I was there. I remember my deputy, Dr. James Kisia, telling me, "You're mad, you know, how do you take us in there? You know, we have families." And we say, "James, this is what we are made of. This is the purpose why we're supposed to be here. If it is to happen to us, it would be too sad if you are caught in the line of duty. But we have a responsibility to go and show leadership to those staff and volunteers. We want to rescue other Kenyans. One life we save is as many as can be, and it's godly for that matter. So, I mean, for me, leadership is also about integrity and honesty and respect.
People still think you're just too controversial, but of course now we understand you do it for people, the people that have put you there to serve them. Is there a moment that you got in trouble because of your accountable leadership, your honesty, your accountability to the people? Maybe with government, maybe with communities in the line of your work?
Not with communities, not at all with communities, but with government, yes. Certain officers, not the government per se as a government, but individuals who are representing the government who did not like what I said. I know there was a minister, I was told once by an ambassador over dinner that this particular parliamentarian has come to us and told us that they love to hate you. And I said, why? I said, because you make them look bad. That's what the guy said. And it has never been my intention to make anyone look bad. My intention has always been for that victim of that emergency, that disaster. It was my responsibility to give them the best. I got into trouble sometimes releasing figures of casualties or dead people or injured people, where the government would not have wanted that to happen, or certain people in the government didn't want that to come out. That is their responsibility. And I understood, but you know, when the media keeps on asking you, when you were in Westgate, for example, I got into a lot of trouble with both the military and Ministry of Interior. And I used to talk to then Inspector General of Police, and we say, you know, what do you want? If you guys, the government, because the government, they're restricted, they're not allowed to speak with hierarchy and all that. Whereas in our case, it was very easy. I was the spokesperson. And I didn't know how to lie and if I had to tell Kenyans the truth. So when you ask by the media, both local and international, do you or don't you? So of course, there are a number of instances where I got into trouble with certain individuals in the government, but
not the government,
not the government per se. And that's what I used to say to many African countries. Your national society will not undermine you because it is enacted through an act of parliament. It's auxiliary to the government. Would I want to be seen to be in competition with the government? Hell no.
During such times, Dr. Abbas, you have a public that wants updates. Then you have media that wants access. You always have government that wants to control information. And you have families that need empathy because you never know whether their loved one is there. Where do you draw the line?
For me, the most important is the family members. It's to talk to the families in confidence. It's to talk to the family, to support them, to mentor them, to counsel them, to make them understand what you are doing and give them as much as you can, but what is not possible is not possible. So, of course, you'd have to weigh the situation and understand that each situation is different from the other and there is not one script that you can give across the board to everybody. But it's a delicate balancing act that one has to do, and you have to be very smart about it. Otherwise, it can land you into a lot of problems either way. Yeah.
And today, if you're to be given a blank check on this continent, let's say by the African Union, what is that one thing you'll prioritize and build that is currently missing?
One is pride, proud to be an African. And number two, to say this continent has what it takes to domesticate and to deal with all disasters in this continent. If it is beyond us, then we can go out and look for help. But it's about African Union taking over responsibility for the day-to-day governance and management of the AU, and to say that, priority will be given to African actors and African players and African organization is what we're going to promote. The Pan-Africanism that our forefathers were yearning for and asking for is doable, it's possible. We must start locally, including here in Kenya. Kenya as a country, we can manage our disasters largely by ourselves. But it's about setting up priorities and putting our houses in order and setting up organizations that would be tasked with functions that only they would be allowed and they will be held accountable, and government can resource them. Because it's not for lack of resources in this country, Noella. There's plenty of resources.
A lot.
Yes. But Kenyans also would be willing to give as long as they can trust that institutions and the individual in those institutions.
Trust issues.
Yes.
And of course, now we have also this young population, the Gen Z on the continent, does not trust millennials, does not trust geriatrics. They don't trust anyone. They trust themselves. And looking at Africa is the youngest continent. So the future is in the hands of our young population.
Sure.
Is it that the Pan-African system is not ready for Gen Zs, or it's the Gen Zs who are not ready to lead?
Well, one thing that is permanent in life is change.
Yeah.
And if we don't embrace change, we'll be caught by it. I think what we lack is mentorship. What we lack is role models and good role models to these young people. And even that opening statement is about that African culture and tradition. We sat with our young people. We molded them. We trained them. We interacted with them. We counseled them. At passing of every level of age, there are things that we did. Many times, even President Kenyatta or Kibaki, there's a discussion about mentoring young people. And there's not an organized manner this being done. Even traditionally now, from a family perspective, girls and boys being mentored by their grandfathers, grandmothers, uncle, aunties about puberty and all these things, it's hardly there because we become very materialistic, very Western, very, different aspect of things.
Guarded. Everyone is within their own space.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess governments have to sit back, and we as older people need to sit back and critically look at this subject matter because it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
It will only get worse. Because we're discussing all the time about future, and youth are being told you are the future. They're saying, no, we are present.
Yeah, we're here.
We're here.
And we need to be listened.
Yes.
And we need to be part of it.
Yes. But if they were engaged, if they were listened to, if the economies were managed well, because it's about unemployment. Okay? A lot of them come with degrees, 2-3 degrees. They have no jobs.
True.
It has to change. And if it's not going to change, then change will catch up with us. And for me, I believe culturally, we need to go back to the drawing board As a country, economies have to be managed. You see what happened in Cameroon, a 92-year-old man who did not even campaign and had a robot or a machine walking around campaigning for himself.
His clone. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Or in Tanzania, where all the opposition guys were basically locked up.
Yeah.
How do we then talk about, and I'm not talking about Western democracy. We must have our indigenous African way of democracy. Yeah. Whether it is negotiated or whatever it is, we put the country first. But we are putting ourselves first. And plunder of resources, natural resources, national resources that should be shared equally and equitably. And, everyone should feel I'm part of it. Or when you don't feel you're part of it, then you do what we do.
It goes back to leadership. It's the leadership model we put into place. You're this hero, Dr. Abbas. Everyone sees you and you're this towering humanitarian icon, a paragon of excellence. But you're human.
For sure.
We never see the overwhelmed side of things. When you're overwhelmed at the peak of your career, how did you manage that? Because at the end of the day, you're human.
Basically, by going back to your creator. Because I really thank God for having given me that capacity, that opportunity at that time. And that's why I used to tell my colleagues, we are very lucky to be here in this day and this time of our age. Kenya was already 45, 50 million. Why the 200 of us here? Yeah. What is so special about us? There are many others that are much better than us, more qualified than us. Yeah. Okay? But God has selected us this time. So we should never let him down. We should be thankful. We should be appreciative. And we should never complain.
Exactly. It's been a calling.
Yes, more than a calling. Exactly.
You also started some very progressive innovations of the Red Cross, the Kenya Red Cross app, the Emergency Response Center. You had many things going. And looking at the things you did at the Kenya Red Cross and looking at our continent, where is the place of innovation?
The challenge is that if we don't innovate, you will remain where you want to remain. The world will move on without you. We can see innovation in the young people, the way they raise money on social media, we talked earlier.
Crowdfunding.
And the young people are way ahead of us. And this way we have failed to embrace them at what they're good at. And recognizing that and appreciating that. And giving them the space to excel, to make the changes that we need to. But for me, it's very interesting that innovation, like change, is something that we cannot overlook. And when we said in Kenya Red Cross we wanted to become sustainable, but the business we're going to set up were linked to, first and foremost, I always said we must remain with our fundamental humanitarian work was our priority, number one. When we set up E+, the idea was if there'll be a road accident, there'll be a disaster, we'll be the first responder. But at the same time, if I could use that to do business, which gives me the capacity to respond before I get money from government or from donors or from the public, I must start because I need to be there. I want to be the first responder. Always there was the motto, still is the motto. So how will I be always there if I don't have the basics? Looking back 15 years earlier when we set that up, no one could tell what impact it would have on Kenyans and on this country. It gets 30 or 40,000 calls every year.
Wow.
Asking for ambulance services.
Countrywide.
It has employed, over 350 young Kenyans. When we set up the hotel, the idea was to provide income and business that with a profit that goes back to the Red Cross. When we set up the hospitality school, was to address the issues of young people and unemployment. Now, many young people from Boma International Hospitality College are employed global. You can go to the 4 continents and you'll find a footprint there. Yeah. And that's what it meant. When we set up the TV station, it was meant to be a channel addressing and discussing issues of young people. So for me, innovation is something that is not negotiable. You have to think ahead. of time. But many times, many of us in the old school are caught in our cocoons, and we end up being there and not seeing what's there. Today, AI, everything is about AI.
Tech, exactly.
Yes.
I laugh. I heard you say we only stop learning when we go 6 feet under.
Mm-hmm.
When we're above ground, it's always learning.
Yes.
It's always innovating. Lastly, Dr. Abbas, before communication, whether it's with the private sector, humanitarian agency, or even government, it was just used as a PR tool. Right now, communication is a very critical frontline tool for humanitarian response or emergency response.
Mm-hmm.
What's its future within humanitarian programming?
See, the world around us has changed, and how humanitarian aid would play in the future has drastically changed in Naila. And for me, I even wonder where it has gone or where it's going. The question is, what you earlier said, is how innovative we want to be. And how can we think out of that traditional box and think afresh? I mean, if I were leading an institution today in that, I would say on humanitarianism, I would look for some of the cutting-edge leading communication companies and start rethinking where is, first of all, this whole business going. Does it have a future? And if so, what kind of future? Because it can't be the same. And to look for local solution to local problems. So we just have to rethink afresh. Even here in this country, do we need 50, 100 CBOs or 500 CBOs that have been set up to do what? As you were earlier saying, the duplicity and the waste of resources, how can this be, overcome? And that's what I think the government itself need to command and control, train and empower few, and say, anyone who wants to work, you work through this.
Yeah.
We will provide oversight, we will ensure accountability and transparency, and we'll give government resources to do this. If that can be done, then you change the humanitarian space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Moving from enterprise to impact, because right now it looks like enterprise. Lastly, Dr. Abbas, there's this common word that I think at times it gets abused. Resilience, 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 resilience. What does Africa's story of resilience mean to you?
It's simple for me, is African solutions to African problems, where communities know what are their challenges, communities have ideas on how to address those challenges. So again, it's all about leadership and vision.
So Dr. Abbas, it's truly an honor to have you on this premiere of DevCom Podcast. Again, another honor to have your signature as you commit to be a DevCom champion.
Good. So where do I sign?
Choose any place. Okay. So thank you, Dr.
Not
Abbas.
at all.
Thank you so much.
Thank
this
you
has
for
been the
having me.
premiere of DevCom Africa.
Thank you
and
for
Dr.
having me.
Abbas, Karibu Sana. Dr. Abbas has reminded us that the most genuine form of power, it is service to the people. And it is possible for African leadership, whether it's public or private or humanitarian, to be accountable, impactful, but also genuinely human to the people that we serve. Follow us, like us, stay tuned to our next episode when, once again, we'll move forward with Africa's development agenda. Thank you, Dr. Abbas.
Asante sana.
Nashukuru.
Na mubarikiwe.
Asante.
Good luck.